You wanna know why I bought this? Because I'm stupid. So just a few days ago, on Monday, December 3rd, 2018, the PlayStation Classic was released, and there's a lot of negativity around this device, a lot of negative articles. You got people like Metal Jesus Rock saying, I'm canceling my pre-order, Radical Reggie, I'm canceling. A lot of people upset with the game selection. And the question is the negativity surrounding this warranted? And honestly, yeah, kinda. And before, do I regret buying this? No, I don't regret buying this. But is it pretty bad? Yeah, it kind of is. And I didn't read a lot of those articles and videos and stuff ahead of time, but I had heard that many of the games on here were the PAL versions. And for those of you who weren't around in the old days, PAL region televisions used to have a refresh rate of 50 Hertz, and North American televisions had the 60 Hertz refresh rate. So essentially the games would run slower in the PAL versions to sync with that refresh rate on the screen. So essentially the games would run at 50 frames per second as opposed to a game that would be running at 60 frames per second. And you know, I had heard that and I thought, oh, that's weird and that kind of sucks, but maybe it's not that big of a deal and maybe it won't notice. Whew, boy, was I wrong. One of the games on here is Tekken 3, arguably one of the best fighters on the PlayStation in general. And I'm very familiar with that game, and it's not that I've just been playing it on emulation for many, many years. I have the real game, and I've been playing it on my PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, PS3, and on emulation. I've played Tekken 3 to death. I love the game. So, of course, when I got the PlayStation Classic, that was the first game I went to. And whoo boy, did I notice immediately, I was like, oh, this doesn't feel right. And prior to me getting this, I had played Tekken just a few nights ago, so it was fresh in my mind. And I recorded this footage here with my capture card, which I was recording in 60 frames per second. It has a tendency to smooth things out anyway when I'm recording at this frame rate, but I'm hoping you can see the difference on screen of the footage that I'm showing you right now of the PlayStation Classic running Tekken 3 versus, I'm going to flip back and forth to me running Tekken 3 on the Raspberry Pi through emulation, using the same exact emulator by actually both the PlayStation Classic and the Raspberry Pi use the same exact emulator. So I don't know if you can see that very well, but it was very sluggish and very noticeable to me when I was playing Tekken. I'm like, ooh, this sucks. This is slower. It isn't smooth. And I have to be left wondering, why, man? Why did they choose to do this? Because when I open up the package, man, this thing looks great. I absolutely love it. And this is one of the reasons why I do not regret buying it, because it's absolutely gorgeous and it looks wonderful. And, you know, even if this had the best game lineup of all time and looked absolutely amazing, most likely it was going to be a collector's item for me anyway, where it's cool, I play with it, it's novel, but just like my Nintendo and Super Nintendo classics, they kind of just go as a museum piece and a respect of the time. And my emulation, I kind of play those games through emulation through Raspberry Pi because it's just much more convenient for me these days and to have it all. But that being said, it just, you know, this looks so great, and it's such a bummer that many of the games, and I don't know the exact full length of them because I didn't play them all, but I loaded up Jumping Flash and it says Sony Computer Entertainment of Europe, and it's like, I'm in North America loading this, it shouldn't be saying Sony Computer Entertainment of Europe. I can't understand why that is. And so I haven't tried this yet for myself, but apparently my brother told me if you plug in a keyboard, you can actually get into the emulator settings and maybe change the region. But if that's true, I shouldn't have to do that as the end user, especially if I live here in the United States in the North America realm. I shouldn't be having to do that. It should just be automatically the NTSC version of the game. But one of the other things I do like is the controllers. Man, these are awesome because they're not using any kind of proprietary connection. It's just a straight USB controller. And I did test this on the Raspberry Pi. You can just plug it in and the Raspberry Pi sees it as a Sony PlayStation controller, and you can map all the buttons and use it on your Raspberry Pi or your PC or Mac as well. It'll just plug in and work as a regular USB controller, and that's awesome. And another thing I like is that they covered up the USB connection with a little bit of extra plastic, so it kind of emulates and looks like an original PlayStation controller, especially when it's connected into the PlayStation Classic. It just looks really nice and fit, man. And so, in that regard, as far as the games lineup, I have to agree with everyone being disappointed, because as you flip through, sure, there are some great games on there. You've got Final Fantasy VII, Wild Arms, a lot of good RPGs, but there are some questionable ones. Like me, I really don't get the Intelligent Cube game. Maybe I'm stupid. Obviously, I am stupid for buying this. Just kidding. But it's just not a fun game to me. So it's mind-boggling that that was chosen on there. And I don't know if it's a difference because of rights, because Crash Bandicoot, Activision now put out that new version. The same with Spyro. They're putting out those remasters. But, you know, Crash was such the unofficial mascot of the PlayStation brand. You had those old commercials of him standing outside of Nintendo with the megaphone being like, "Your days are numbered, plumber boy," and all that stuff. So Crash was the face of PlayStation. So it feels absent having him not be a part of this collection and celebration of the PlayStation library. And same with Spyro. You don't have to have all 3 games, but you should at least have Spyro the Dragon. That was the great thing about the PlayStation, was there was a game for everybody on it, from kids all the way to adults. And I think you get some of the adult and mature themes with having Metal Gear Solid and some of those other games like Persona. But also, you should include those things that got the younger markets that a lot of us grew up with, like Spyro, and even Crash for that matter. And so I totally get people's frustration and questions about the game lineup. I just think that more often than not, you'll find yourself scrolling past certain games like, I don't really want to play this. And that's what this should not have been. The Super Nintendo Classic had a pretty killer list of games where you're like, man, I want to play that, I want to play that, that's a great game. And you're not getting that on this at all. And it's a shame. And I know the UI, the user interface, is trying to mimic the actual PlayStation menu or the CD player of the menu when you went and looked at your memory card. But it just, I don't know, I kind of, part of me half likes it, but the other part of me doesn't. It looks so crude. And the fact that you can use a keyboard and get into the settings of the emulator and all that, you should have been able to do that anyway. You shouldn't have to, it shouldn't have to be this big secret. And so, all in all, why I'm saying I am not disappointed in buying this, though, is that it is cool that it looks great, and it's only a matter of time before somebody hacks it and either finds a way to put your own games on the system or swap things out, or maybe even expand it with some kind of hack with a micro SD card, or who knows, maybe I'll just somehow fit a Pi in here. But another thing I think this is great is that this will give Raspberry Pi case makers a chance to look at this injection molded type case here and get some ideas for making their own. And I think it's only a matter of time. Retroflag has been killing it with making the Super Nintendo, Super Famicom, and now their most recent and best case, the Sega Genesis Mega Pi case. I think it's only a matter of time before Retroflag or somebody like them creates a PlayStation case for the Raspberry Pi. But it would be awesome if this could just be expanded in and of itself, and I would totally use this to start doing PlayStation emulation. So that is the main reason why I don't regret buying this. And I do love the controllers. I love them a lot. I think that's super fantastic. It'd be great if Sony just started selling those on the thing. And you know, a lot of people were mad that this used PCSX Rearmed, which is an open source emulator not created directly by Sony. The Raspberry Pi use it. People have been using other variations of the emulator on computer for years. But I thought that was awesome and cool, because what that says to me is that unlike Nintendo and their attitude towards it, I feel like Nintendo kind of Sony kind of embraces that aspect of game preservation and emulation. Instead of trying to shut down the developers of this emulator, they've just embraced it and said, yeah, okay, great, we'll use it on an official product. And I will always say what I do like about this is that, yes, it doesn't have the stellar amount of games that we want. Actually, I'm going to go back on this thought. What I was about to say is that I love, for people who aren't technically savvy or don't want to mess around with doing anything with emulation, ROMs and all that and ISOs, it's a great thing to get a new player, a younger player, to get something like this and see and easily experience some of the great games that we all love. However, that actually bothers me now that I sit here and think about it, that I'm like, I love when these things are made because it opens up the market for a new audience to come and experience these awesome games. However, this was such a bad lineup to give these people, because what I'm worried about is that a younger kid might be interested in getting this, or say someone around 14 years old right now might be like, you know what, yeah, let me see what that's all about. Let me see a little bit of history. They get home, they plug this in, and they're like, oh man, these games kind of suck. And that's not what you want to happen. You want to have the best games on there. You want to have your Crash Bandicoot. You want to have Spyro and all the other great games that are missing from this thing, maybe even Tomb Raider. But, you know, instead you've got Intelligent Cube and Cool Borders 2. I mean, I guess a lot of people like that. Or Battle Arena Toshinden. Not a great game. It didn't age well. I guess you can say it's technically impressive. That was one of the first games I had for my Sega Saturn. But even then, back then, it wasn't that good of a game. So I just worry that people get this like, oh gosh, that was what PlayStation 1 was like? Yuck. And that makes me sad, because what's been weighing on my heart, and this is probably a separate video in and of itself, I've honestly been wondering if, and I want to know, I don't know how many young people watch this channel, but I want to know if young people out there are actually care about retro games or going back in the past and looking about it. Because I've always said, like a broken record, I feel like that's a natural inclination, that if you are a fan or a hobby of something, you have a natural desire to go back and see things. For example, I love movies. So when I got into like horror movies, I wanted to see all like the older horror movies from like even back to the 30s and Nosferatu with 1922 and the 70s horror movies. I wanted to go back. And same with video games. There's quite a lot that I missed out on because I just wasn't old enough, and I'm still playing catch up, and I want to go back. And I wonder though that there's so much volume now with games, and they're so incredible and visually stunning that I just wonder, are younger audiences even caring? Because that's my main purpose for struggling in my busy life to do these videos and reviews on games that I review, whether they be newer indie titles or just older games, which I try to highlight, is because I'm trying to bring that light and keep these things alive for that newer and younger, and not specifically just for young people, but for anybody you know, who hasn't heard of it, to just bring exposure to that and perhaps bring some joy in their life by experiencing it. And so I have to wonder, so if you are of a younger age watching this video, let me know if, yeah, I'm interested in classic games or old games, or no, I don't care. I just can't wait, you know, I can't wait for the next new thing to come out. Let me know, because I'm super curious about it. I really, these are the things I think about and keep me up at night. But all in all, do I recommend buying this? Not really, because it's $100. It's not cheap. And for what you're getting, you might play for it for a little bit and then be like, ooh, I feel a little stupid buying this. Me, I have problems. I'm stupid, and I wanted to have it. I was gonna feel super left out if I didn't get it, because I thought about letting it pass, but I was like, oh, I'm gonna feel left out, and I don't wanna, you know, again, I have problems. But I would say hold on and wait to see what the hacking community can do with this. Otherwise, keep playing your PlayStation games as is if you have a way to play them. Or, you know, Raspberry Pi is a great option and a great way. And of course, you know, PS3, they still sell them digitally. You can get them on there easily. You can get some on, I really wish the PS4 just let you put the discs in. It's ridiculous that it doesn't. Fix that for PlayStation 5, Sony. People still have tons of PlayStation 1 discs. They just want to pop in, and I know I do. So let me know your thoughts on this PlayStation Classic. Do you think Sony really dropped the ball, or do you think people are just overreacting? Personally, I think they did drop the ball with this game selection and the general representation of this. This should have been absolutely great. This system was game and groundbreaking and game-changing for the video game industry. Nobody believed Sony was going to be able to have a foot in the game market. People were like, Sony? Like people who make Walkman? but look at what PlayStation has become today. So let me know your general thoughts on this. Thanks so much for watching, and don't be dumb.